You're watching the Hostile Takeover podcast.
Hey everyone, I'm Jacob from the Hostile Takeover podcast. This week I am speaking with Eamon Mcgrath, who is a musician and author from Edmonton, Alberta, who now resides in Toronto, Ontario. And Eamon is the epitome of hard work and drive. With over 300 songs in his music catalog and pounding the pavement, doing shows, touring all over the world, Eamon takes a DIY approach to music and just lets nothing stand in his way. On his last tour, he had an issue with shipping of some of his CDs. He didn't get his CDs. He had nothing to sell at his shows. So he went out and bought a CD burner and a printer, and he did all of these albums by himself in his hotel room instead of just saying, fuck it, let's do the show. I have nothing but respect for this guy. It takes passion, it takes dedication, it takes determination, and of course, a whole lot of guts for someone to pull that kind of stuff off. Eamon's new album, A Dizzying Lust, is coming out, and he will be touring that. You'll hear more about that in the podcast. I'll stop talking for now and let Eamon say what he has to say. Thank you for watching the Hostile Takeover podcast, and enjoy. Eamon Mcgrath. Hey, dude, how's it going, man?
Hey, okay, we're set.
There we go. Yeah, it's great to see your face, man. It's been some
Totally.
time.
It's been a while. It's been a couple of years. Too bad it's not in person, but that's the
Yeah, I
name
know
of the game
we're
now.
we're definitely due for a catch up. I'd love to work with you again sometime soon.
Totally.
Eamon Mcgrath, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Happy to be here.
Man.
Thanks for asking me to come on.
I know things are ramping up for you, so I appreciate the time very much. And I'm
Of course.
I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time, and I've always just enjoyed chatting with you and hanging out. You're
Yeah, likewise.
you're a great dude to be around, and you're.
Thanks, man.
I don't
So
want
are
to
you.
blow smoke up your ass, but the insanely prolific songwriter and performer. And I've seen you in a few different settings. I've seen you like as a solo act. I've seen you with a band. I've seen you taking like a kind of a step back, like being a guitar player in a band. And it's always entertaining to watch you play, hear you play, see the new things you're doing. Can you just chat with us a little bit about how you produce so much? You have an insanely large catalog of songs. What's your process, and like where do you draw all this inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like you just in the way you eat when you're hungry or something. I mean, I definitely don't plan it that way. I think I'm just kind of a bit of a I have one of those binge personalities.
Yeah.
That's probably served me well and not so well in the past for different reasons. But I mean, yeah, like I'll go 2.5 months without writing a song, and then I'll write 10 of them, and then I try to record everything I write. I try to release as much of what I record as possible, and so just statistically speaking, it's just going to sort of happen that way. Like no. It's not I like to think that Will Kidman from the Constantines once said that rock and roll is the perfect balance between humility and bravado. And so, yeah, I think that there's nothing really spectacular about it. It's a pretty, I'd hate to use the word monotonous, but like the act of recording is pretty mechanical.
Absolutely.
When you have done it, and when you've done it for a long enough time. And in a lot of ways, so is songwriting. The fundamental mechanics of a song are pretty rigid insofar as the music theory aspects of chord changes or whatever, and then it's the lyrical side of it that gives you the freedom to do whatever you want. But everything else abides by this pretty, particular framework. So writing a song is a pretty quick process for me now. It's mostly it's like it's about getting the lyrics to a point where I feel like they're mine because uh like I said, there's only so many places you can go within the Western music medium, you know. So again, like once you sort of know that, it becomes a pretty streamlined process. And that's not to undervalue the work of songwriters. It's just that it's like in the same way that you wouldn't undervalue the skill set of a carpenter who's doing a really good job framing your house in a short period of time.
Yeah, I
You know,
think
you can
I think what you said, like, it's not like like it's definitely like sensationalized in the media,
sensationalize, and I mean like,
but like,
and I think that for a lot of ways, like the the that actually serves to like to 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 sort of like be more mesmerizing in some ways, in the sense that like the more connected I get to the you know the day in day out like jobbing kind of inner workings of being a musician for a living or writing songs for a living, the more blown away I am that despite how much I know about the unexciting aspects of it, uh, I can still go to a show or hear a piece of music and be totally blown away by art, right?
yeah,
And so that's like this total contradictory sort of aspect of being in this line of work. Is that like, I mean, you're a tech, it's the same thing for you. It's like how many lights can you hang, you know, and yet there's still this aspect of like genuinely being blown away by some light shows. I mean, it's just
yeah,
like if you love art and you love music, it's a really nice feeling to know that despite how much of the magic trick is behind the illusion of it, you're still subject to being totally mesmerized by the illusory aspect of it, you know.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's all it is. It's like I know a good song when I hear one, and I I I scrap the shitty stuff, and I keep the stuff that I think is good.
Yeah, that's a cool point. Like, like being like knowing the tricks and knowing the mastery of the craft. Like music and art is just an expression, right? And like
Yeah,
it's a glimpse into somebody else. So like you're always gonna, no matter how much you know about the craft or how much you think, you're always gonna like hear someone else's expression and be like
and be blown away.
have that opportunity to be blown away or like to take it in like different ways, like to be moved in
Yeah,
different
exactly.
places.
And I
Yeah,
mean, and like the again, even with like the amount of shows I play or whatever. I mean, again, like that's for me a pretty familiar feeling. Like, I mean, it's what I do for a living. It's just that's just me working.
hmm
I mean, if you if you worked at your job 250 days a year, which most people do, you don't think that's anything to be amazed about, but
hmm
because it's like I'm in a pretty rigorous and exhausting line of work, people think that it's incredible. But I mean, like I treat myself way better than I used to. I'm a lot healthier now.
that's great
So
to hear, man.
even that is not that much of a superhuman feat anymore.
Yeah,
So like not to downplay like the work of other and stuff, but I mean like I kind of take pride in the fact that for me this all feels pretty natural and it's just what I do, and I don't know any other thing. It's in a lot of ways the only thing I've ever done. So, I just for me it's just you're just working for a living, and I love that about it.
yeah,
Because the bands that I go to see that really blow my mind are also like that, you know.
yeah. You have to be. If you're not the the bands who just focus on the music, everyone's seen a great person like around a campfire pick up a guitar and like strum away, and you're like, oh, that person's amazing. Like they're so talented. But to do it day in day out as a career, because like you don't really have a boss, you don't really have someone saying get the fuck to work. You got to light that fire under your own ass, and you
Totally.
you have to go out and do it. And like if you don't
Yeah.
have that mentality of like this is my job and I need to do a great job, and you're not gonna make
Yeah.
it.
I mean, if I don't play
There's
150
always the
shows a
exception to the
year,
rule, but
yeah, there's always exceptions. And well, totally. And I mean, there's certain artists are in a different kind of income caliber than others, whatever. But if I don't play 150 shows a year, I don't pay my rent. So I feel really fortunate to be in that position, because the fact that I have to be able to afford to live in a city I want to live in and, you know, fucking eat, means that I have to work my ass off and do all the things you're talking about, like write songs and play shows. And I want to do those things. So for me, having the pressure to perform in that, you know, in that arena or whatever is a really comforting feeling for me. Like, I don't have the option to not be prolific. And it's not me, you know, in a pissing contest with another songwriter. It's just like, I have to put out records to live. So I do, you know? And if you're not constantly writing and constantly working on something and constantly uh, delivering in this line of work, like, you're not going to make it. And that's just the bottom line, especially nowadays, because, you know, revenue streams that used to be, you know, a way where artists like me could kind of subsidize, you know, the act of doing. So say, like, you know, touring, getting in a van, booking shows, all that administrative shit, you know, a big whopper royalty check offset all that stuff and made it a little bit more feasible to, you know, take time when you're at home to not have to, you know, go and work at a venue or bartend or whatever. Now all that stuff's gone. So it's like,
talking
I
about
have
like
to
the
work.
feasibility of music is something I definitely want to touch on, but I just want
Yeah,
to
I mean, it's all changed.
it has all changed, and I
So
really want
now
to
it's
talk
like, if
about
you're
it. But
not, yeah, if you're not
something that you
writing
mentioned
and
before,
working.
though, you mentioned you know, songwriting and like the limitations of like the like Western society. Now you've toured all over the world. Um, what do you find is like do you find like certain things you do resonate more, say in the US and Canada, that say like in like you've been to Japan or like Germany, like what resonates more? And do you like, okay, I got this, like I want to go back to Germany, like so I'm gonna like do do this, or like what's what resonates here that doesn't, and vice versa.
Um, well, being sorry, being a Canadian artist is there's a I think that there's a, how can I put this? So, Canadian metal band and a Canadian bluegrass band, in my opinion, I'm laughing because it sounds insane to some people, but like, it might sound hokey, but I think that those two artists are kind of in some ways playing the same kind of music.
Mhm.
So in the sense that, like,
Yeah, like the metal to like country bluegrass pipeline is a real thing.
and even, but even like, yeah, absolutely, but even like, you know, uh, a Canadian electronic act like Junior Boys or something is also kind of coming at songs and music from the same perspective. And this is maybe like a weird theory, but like, I sort of think that, and I mean, for me, this is kind of why the Canadian music community is so tight knit and why everybody sort of knows each other, is because we we were all telling the same story at the end of the day. And I don't think that in Germany that's necessarily the same situation. Like, there's just a unanimous, you know, commonplace perspective. If you've gotten in a van and you've driven from, you know, fucking Saskatoon to Winnipeg to make a 4 p.m. load in the dead of winter, you're coming at music with the same prerogative, you know. And so, and I think that that is like a particularly Canadian thing. I've played, you know, everywhere in the world, maybe, you know, besides Brazil, that you can like lucratively financially work as a musician on an international level. So like the West, you know, Japan, the Western world, where there's infrastructure and money and blah 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 blah, where you're not. And I've done this too, and I don't mean this is a slight. I mean, like, being able to like go on tour and come home with, you know, cash in your pocket and not treat it like a labor of love. Uh, you know, I've played a lot of the places you can do that, and I mean, from my perspective, I don't think that there's the same kind of connectivity that say like a German folk band has with a German black metal band, for example. Whereas in Canada, I think that those two genres or approaches to sound and art might be a little bit more similar, because I think that our experiences here are just so unique and so shared that ultimately, you know, it's that perseverance that brings us together. And I think that it's that perseverance and that dogged resilience to the elements or distance or whatever it is that that form this bond between us. So I think that's a really, really, really uniquely Canadian thing. And I have not seen that anywhere else in the same regard. Like, you know,
Just
I know
to
that
expand on that, you're talking about like just the style of touring you have to do in Canada, and like
totally.
the distance
Yeah,
between cities,
exactly.
getting from like you said, like Saskatoon to Calgary is much different than going from, say, like LA to Las Vegas.
Yeah. And I
You
mean,
know.
like, so say like, in Texas or something, right? Like a really close, like tight knit regional sort of community, like
Mm.
a band like Power Trip, there's a certain twang to Power Trip, in my opinion. Like, even though they're a thrash band, it's like there's a twang to what they do. And I love that about them.
Cool.
Um, just like, there's a twang to like a country singer from Texas. Like, I think that those, though, in that, kind of smaller regional scene, there's probably this connectivity between those two camps. But I have yet to see the way that, like, you know, the experience of Power Trip in the Texas Triangle really, really relates to like the experience of like a DB band like No Fucker from upstate New York. I think those are like two very disparate, very differing, like upbringings.
Yeah.
And for me, the fact that they both play a similar kind of music is not really what makes them the same. Like, it's, to me, it's about like the well that the art comes from, and the like the upbringing that you draw from, and your place within your kind of, like the cultural arena that you create in. I mean, all that stuff is more important to me and more interesting to me than like what I would see as like an arbitrary thing, like the sound of your music. Like, I I think there's a deeper kind of mechanical thing going on. And I mean,
That's a very
yeah,
like good philosophical idea, in that like the though a band may be the same genre, the culture is just like immensely
totally,
different. Like.
immensely different. And so
Hmm.
like their music takes on a whole other meaning, even though they might be like, you know, both playing metal or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and for me, like, I always get lumped into this, like, really, I reluctantly get lumped into this like folk punk fucking thing, which is just insane to me, because it's like I go on tour with people that really just play like skate punk on an acoustic guitar, and I don't do that. And somehow, just because I'm like a guy that has a DIY approach to music and happens to like the Clash, I'm like that's what I do. So for me, like, it's nuts, like, I I I love country music. I love folk music. I love really quiet, beautiful, sad bastard fucking songwriting. And, I love bands that perform with the energy of the Clash. And then I love, like, you know, all encompassing, like overwhelmingly heavy metal, like Napalm Death or I Hate God, and all those different components of sound and rock and roll is how I structure what I do. And so, again, for me, like, an artist like Richard Inman from Winnipeg has more in common with Propagandhi than I think most people realize, you know? And so I feel the same way about what I like. I when I see myself getting classified next to people that have nothing to do with what I do,
Yeah.
it's sort of evidence to me that all that stuff's just totally arbitrary. And what really matters is like the source of the material. And and so that's how I've always thought about Canadian art
Yeah.
too.
It's super easy, especially as a musician, but just like anyone, I think it's really easy to be pigeonholed into something. And I think like a lot of, like, because music is so like heavily reliant on like the marketing of critics, that
Yeah.
it's super easy to be like just lumped into a category that that
Yeah.
doesn't come from a place of like one that like a fan, like they may be a fan, but like they're also like probably listened to like 40 other albums that day. Like, did they really listen to your album? And did they really like, understand your last album and like how your new album relates to it? Like
Well, and not
it's
to mention that
easy to
it's like,
get pigeonholed is what I'm trying to
yeah,
get at,
and I mean, like any kind of, the way I've always thought of it is like any kind of marketing advantage that someone might think they have by being pigeonholed to one distinctly classifiable sector of art is in my mind a, a totally professional disadvantage if all you care about is wanting to work for a living. So for me, I just finished a month of shows in Ontario and Quebec with I was supporting the Mahones for
Yeah.
two of them, and then I was supporting a songwriter from Nashville named Will Hoge for two of them. And that guy's like a total like Americana, country Nashville songwriter like that wheelhouse to a T. And then the Mahones are this, like Celtic kind of hardcore punk band or whatever.
Yeah.
And like I sound nothing really like either of them, but I was able to take the offers on both tours, and I now I can pay my fucking rent. And if I was like an easily classifiable artist, I don't think I would have the opportunity to be working that hard in the wintertime. So some people see it as a detriment, um, for maybe, trying to sell music for people that don't really care about music.
Yeah.
But for me, I see it as a huge advantage when, all I care about is whether or not they're playing music for a living. And for me, you know, that's really the end goal. Is like, can I hit my 200 show a year quota, that my income depends on? And if so, then I'm happy. And that's all I need to do. And if I was like, if I was, yeah, like a one trick pony, like if all I did was play Americana, if all I did was play punk rock, if all I did was play shitty acoustic skate punk, there's no way I could pull that off. So, what
You
some
don't
people
mean
see as
shitty acoustic skate punk. You love it.
I'm talking about,
I get what you're saying.
talking about people that play every single guitar string all at once, and it's just this rattling, like nonsensical barrage of fucking just and shouting over it. Like I hate that stuff.
Oh, do you
So
really?
anyway, like yeah,
that's how
but
Joe
yeah, I mean,
Strummer played, though, man.
I think Joe Strummer had a little bit more grace and elegance to what he was
He
doing.
did. He
People
was a
realize,
genius. Global A Go Go is one of my favorite albums of all time.
yeah. And I
It
mean,
was just
he's like the ultimate,
like a departure from the Clash. As
yeah.
well.
And I mean, like he's the perfect example of like an artist that you should totally aspire to, in the sense that like the only reason why anyone ever associates him with punk rock is because he does what he does with the energy of like a force of nature. And if that's what makes you punk rock, then I am totally up for it. But
truly,
Joe Strummer
that's
was
what
like,
does, in my opinion. But like,
yeah, I think so too.
My opinion on
And I
punk
mean,
rock doesn't matter for shit.
Fela Kuti is the same as Black Flag, in my opinion. And so yeah. So I mean, I think if I didn't have that approach and I didn't love all types of music and see the connectivity between them in the same way we were talking about, uh, how Canadian artists are all bonded by this sense of dogged determination or struggle or whatever. I think that's also the international message of what I and you might call punk rock, in the sense of like, I love musicians that sing about the ongoing struggle of the working class, for example. And the way that they communicate that and the sounds that they use is kind of irrelevant to me, because what's interesting to me is the story and the energy and the fact that they're doing it.
I really respect what you're saying. And what I find interesting about this approach that you have is, one, you're being super true to yourself. And you're not like going with a pigeonhole of like being genre specific, and you're really trying to like blend genres and like explore different sounds, and like take you to always take your audience, whether it be on one of your albums or a live show, like on a journey. You're not just like doing the same thing the whole time. So I think that approach is like a lot more relatable to somebody who's open to that experience. And when people are open to that experience, I think that's when like a real fan, like it happens. And like I've noticed that with you. And like I think I brought you up when I was running the venue that I used to own. um I noticed that on your posts, like, my buddy Greg would just like he would comment on every one of your posts, and he would share like all of your posts, and like to see that kind of a fan is something that is really reserved for people with your approach. There are some other artists that I know that kind of have similar approaches, and you can see it in their fan base that those people are just like wholeheartedly there for it.
Well, yeah, man, and I mean, um, yeah, you're right. Like, I might. So Will Hoge, I was telling you about, is supporting him last weekend or whatever. Um, at the merch booth at the end of the night, my line might be half as long as Will's because I'm not as well known. But the people that are coming up to me and buying my stuff are like diehard music fans, and it's because they love music so much, and they love so many different kinds of music that they connect the dots that I'm trying to connect. And I would way rather mean more to less people than mean nothing to a lot of people.
Hmm.
And again, that comes within my attitude, just to like, make sure that as long as I'm hitting a quota of X amount of shows a year and I'm making this amount of money, I'm totally happy. I don't need to
Yeah.
like I don't need fucking 20 million Spotify streams. I just need to play 200 shows a year. And if mathematically, for me to do that, it means that people are going to have to come to see me. And it's just that simple. Like, I, and that's the way I've been doing it since I was 17. And I mean, I packed it in a full-time job when Young Canadians came out in 2012, and I haven't had a job since. So to me, that's the secret. I I don't understand a lot of the clamoring in the music industry, and the climbing over people on the way to the top and not having integrity and being true to yourself as an expense that's just totally slashable. To me, that's nuts.
It is nuts. I don't think that's
And
unique to the music industry, but in just business in
sure,
general.
business in general. I mean,
Yeah.
like I'm kind of an example of how you can pull it off and make a living playing music through increasingly difficult times, if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of comfort, if you don't treat people like shit, if you adapt what you do to accommodate circumstances of your time, and if you sell something people want to buy.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. It's weird. Like a lot of people talk about like, the secret, and it's such a hard thing because like a lot of people like can't do what you do. Um,
When so many people
like
so many
they're just
people give into this
incapable of it.
illusion, yeah, or like like, I don't understand an artist that signs some deal where they might have 25 million Spotify streams or something, but they don't own a single note of their own music, and they're broke as fuck.
Hmm.
And it's like, here I am, and I don't have anywhere near that. Like, I don't even look at Spotify numbers because it's
It
pointless.
doesn't matter.
But
Yeah.
it's like, but you know, I own all my own masters. I have since I started playing music. I've never ever even acknowledged that
Mhm.
as there being an alternative. And I mean, I can afford to live. It's awesome.
And
So
and
for
you
me,
were kind of on the
you know,
like the forefront of that. Like you realized before a lot of other people. Like there are other people who have, but I think you had your ear to the ground on the industry, and you like either you read about it or you just like intuitively did it. But like owning your own shit and like being your own business, your own boss, not going into debt with a record company or like making bad business deals with other people. Um, what blows me away is that like how exploitative it can be, and whether it's purposeful or not or
yeah,
whatever is up for debate. But the like the comedy world, like like I watch a lot. I love comedy. It's one of my favorite things to watch. So like music and comedy are huge parts of my life. And the comics have been doing this way longer than like any musicians I've heard talk about it. These people like they have their own message boards, they have their own ticketing set up. They're not relying on anyone to do these shows. And that's something that I hear almost every touring comic talk about.
Oh, dude, I respect that attitude and approach so much. I mean, and yeah, like as a parallel, when I like, so what we were talking about June 2021, I started touring again after, whatever, I got my shots and people were fucking willing to see me play, and I was like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I?
Mm-hmm.
So I bought a battery powered PA, um, and for a long time, for like a year and a bit more, like 80% of the shows I did were just like me rolling into someone's backyard with a cooler full of beer and merch
Yeah.
and a PA system playing a show. And I controlled every single aspect of it. I had my own production, had my own lights. It was completely self-contained. A lot of the time I did my own bar,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's like I was making pretty great money. And I just fail to understand why someone would opt out of doing it that way when it's like there were people that were sitting at home not working because they just didn't think it was worth it or something, you know. And
Well,
that's, to me, that's
I don't know if
crazy.
you can see
But
you can see this on the recording, but I don't know if you can see that. But I got this shirt when he came to play my driveway during the
oh,
pandemic.
BA,
Yeah,
yeah, you got a BA shirt,
yeah.
yeah. So
He was
like
doing
for
the
in
same thing you were doing, man. And like he's the same
yeah,
as you.
man,
He's like fucking. He does everything, and
BA
he
and I
brought his
were
own.
messaging each other fall of 2021 a lot, like
Yeah,
exchanging kind of like information on who in which city was willing to put shows on, and like what the fucking rules were here and there, and blah blah blah. And
yeah,
it was for a long time, for like almost a year, like BA Johnson and I were the only two people in Canada working. I
yeah.
swear to God.
Well, and like
And it was
it's
like,
not surprising. Like you guys are just like both fucking road dogs, man. Like the amount of shows you guys play is like really impressive, man. Like I know you say like everybody works 250 days a year, but like, I know what it takes to tour, and like I've luckily like, had a really great career, and the tours that I've done have been like way cushier than yours or BA's. Just like super high budgets, because that's when like they bring on
sure,
someone
that's
like
when they can
me,
afford to hire you. Yeah.
and like that is like I feel like such a like a fucking asshole when I say like my job is tough to someone like you or BA, because
Oh
like
well, it
the
is
way
tough,
it, like
but I mean,
it's
and
tough, but like I fucking respect the hell out of you guys for it, man. And like
well, I mean, the thing that blows my eyes is that like the way I tour now is way cushier than how I used to. And again, like it's like uh that's another thing. I mean, like if you're smart about it and you own, your own means of production, and you're really, really in touch with every single aspect of the business that you own and operate, you can control decisions like,
Mhm.
luxurious expenses. And like I
Yeah.
got better at, boring shit, like whatever, all that monotonous bullshit like taxes or whatever. But it's like, um
And some
yeah, I mean, like
just
I stay in hotel rooms now, but when I was in my early 20s, I was like that typical fucking, crust punk rocker where it's just like I didn't give a
anywhere.
shit where I was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, um it got to the point where I was just like, it got harder and harder to do the job,
Hmm.
by treating myself worse. So now it's a totally different thing. But
Hmm.
but
So
yeah, I
something
was
you
I was
touched
I
on
was
about
fucking crazy back then.
the way you were doing these shows, middle of the pandemic, showing up to people's backyards, and you mentioned like doing your own bar and stuff. This is something I've been chatting with people about forever. Like back when I used to like uh, manage like Freeman Dre, for instance. I was always like, don't do your big show at the Horseshoe. Nothing against the Horseshoe. The Horseshoe's great. It's like a fucking Toronto staple venue. But I'm like, do that big show at your own hall, rent a PA, put on the show, get a liquor
Yep.
license,
I
sell
agree.
your own beer, like especially in your home market, or like an album release or something special that's like gonna bring in all your like in your like most, and if you get to a point where you can go to like a bunch of cities and rent your own hall and put on your own show, like fucking yes, but like
But
it's
it's
tough to
what
like
you're
do it in different
describing.
markets.
Yeah,
But
like on one hand, you could call what you're describing, DIY punk rock,
yeah,
whatever. But then, to some Bay Street douchebag, that's called vertical integration.
yeah,
And so, like, that's the thing. I mean, it's like it's just a really, really smart way of of being perseverant and you know being like just being able to continue
yeah.
going as a musician now. That's the kind of, to me, that's like all part of it. You got to like really get creative and adapt to what's happening. And you're absolutely right. I mean, like, there's, when we were in full tilt COVID land and I was playing shows every night. I mean, I couldn't afford to. I mean, first of all, there just wasn't anywhere to do there wasn't anywhere to play that wasn't
Yeah.
self, created, self-established
Hmm.
show. But I mean, also the margins were so thin that it was just like, um, couldn't afford to not sell my own beer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
I
you like
mean, what you're saying is totally right.
innovated out of like necessity, kind of.
100%, man. And I mean, a lot of ways, like, it's nice because that spirit that was kind of this like frontier kind of thing when all that was going down. I mean, that's fortunately carried over into, into where we currently are, where, I mean, the shockwave and the ripple effect of all that madness is now, still very much a thing where, like, I play more DIY shows now than I used to, just because there's just nowhere else to do them in some
Hmm.
places. So, I mean,
The DI like
you know,
the whole industry is buzzing about these like DIY shows
well, which is
now.
which is
It's
cool,
like
but also it's just crazy
it's
because
like
it's,
a
I've been
huge,
doing that for 15 years. I mean, I've been
yeah,
playing house shows in Europe since
yeah,
2008. I've been playing hall shows since
yeah,
2004. I've been playing basement shows since I was 11 years old. I mean, it's
yeah,
nothing new to me, but it's funny how, like, you know, as everything kind of collapses, people treat it like it's some, answer, but it's
yeah,
always been the answer. It's always been the solution. Controlling your own art and
yes,
the means by which it's created is always a better idea
hundred
than
percent.
handing over the keys to the Camaro to
Yeah.
someone that doesn't know
And
how
like
to drive it.
yeah, and like now that like
So,
so like this like like I saw it all over like all like the music panels and stuff at like things like South by Southwest and stuff, where like industry people come and chat and stuff, and like they're totally fucking gentrifying house shows, man.
yeah, whatever. I mean, it's like,
It's crazy. Like you see these like people try to like just fucking like cling on to onto this shit, man. But
yeah, because
it's like
it's
and
the only revenue stream, and but it's
yeah,
like what they don't realize is that it's like it's been there's been there's been like a subculture that's existed, and essentially making them obsolete for forever,
yes, yeah.
forever since like whatever you want to call the dawn of punk rock. I mean,
Yeah.
like, since you had the established, court of Vienna fucking commissioning Mozart to blah blah blah, and then you had some drunk fucking dude in Budapest in a tavern somewhere that didn't know how to read and write. That's
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, man. Like
Nothing changes.
some of the best experiences I've ever had were like house shows and like small little like even the ones that I've like promoted when I'm like, trying to get a band to show somewhere, and I'm like, oh, how am I going to make this work, like, and like I had like Jesse Roper, who's this really awesome blues player, like kind of like rock blues, like this like super talented dude, great like great rhythm section he has as well, like three-piece band, and I had him at this little like house show in this like loft in Toronto. My friend had this wicked space, and we're just like, let's put on a show here, and like we did it, and it was like
Absolutely.
one of the best nights of music in my life. And like back when I was a kid, like this is like fucking a long fucking time ago, man. But like there was this dude in uh, where was it? It was somewhere in like the not Muskoka. What's the other one? Kawarthas. And he had this like birthday party every year that he kind of did himself, and it was like a punk rock festival, and it was called Kirkstock, and it was
Oh, sweet.
yeah, it was amazing, man. Like I saw like
Yeah.
like Hockey Teeth played there, and like DOA, and like all sorts of like wicked bands played there, um, and it was just the best. And it was just like the dude bought his own pig, he bought his own spick, and he did up that, and like people ate and drank, and it was fucking wild, man. It was a great
I have
time.
a story. A friend of mine named Jacob Taves, who is a Vancouver-based um, experimental electronic musician who I've collaborated with a lot. Very good friend of mine, incredibly talented person. He was telling me, as you know, like about a show he played in Nantes in France in, I want to say, like 2006, and he got paid in a barrel of gasoline, and the band meal hospitality was a goat being roasted on a fucking spit made of rebar. You
Yeah,
know,
man.
and like that's how would you? Why would you ever want to play like a a run of the mill, you know, like totally typical club show instead of that show?
That's amazing.
Like for me, it's like I play all kinds of shows. Like I play, anything all the time. But I mean, like that sounds like a way cooler time, in my
Yeah,
opinion,
yeah.
than
Getting
just like
getting paid
4
getting
p.m.
paid in
load
a
in, blah blah
goat
blah.
goat on a spick and a barrel of gasoline sounds way better than like
Yeah,
$500 and a beer ticket.
totally.
Yeah.
And especially when like as a solo act in Europe and stuff. I mean, like I've played shows in the Czech Republic or Germany or Switzerland or Austria like that, where I mean, I make quadruple what I would if I was playing at a club.
Mhm. Yeah,
So so yeah, I mean, it's all about, for me, it's just about like understanding what you want from a career and just taking the necessary steps of making that happen. And it doesn't, everybody's trajectory doesn't have to be some TikTok star. Like I don't
Mhm.
care about that. So like for me, it makes no sense to shoot for to swing for those fences or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like I want to make a living playing shows with the goat on the rebar stick. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's how I want to pay my rent. So that's what I do. And I've been lucky enough to figure out how to
So
make that happen.
it's
Just like people, just like lots of people have figured out how to do things that I have no idea how to do. I don't know how to get I don't know how to get that level of Spotify streams, but it's because it's
Mhm.
like I don't care. I just don't care.
Yeah.
I care about what I do and I'll be doing it. And that's what matters.
Yeah, I saw a guy chat about I follow him on TikTok. I've seen him on my Facebook like a bunch, like cuz like I got a bunch of friends in common with him. His name's Kevin Fowley. He's like an East Coast musician. But I discovered him on TikTok, right? And I'm like, "Oh, that's the guy that I always see on my like people you may know on Facebook." So I just said hey, and he posts a lot of really interesting content on TikTok, and one of the things he was saying was that he's got this awesome TikTok following, right? He's got like I don't know what the number is, but a lot more than like Spotify or YouTube or Facebook or anything. And he's saying it's almost I'm paraphrasing, but he's saying it was almost a detriment to him booking shows because people see that and they just associate it with just like kind of like it doesn't associate the asses in the venue for promoters anymore.
Not even
So like
close.
yeah, it's like it's not like and promote for the longest time social media was like the thing. It's like what are your social media numbers? I'm sure you've heard that like a million times,
Yeah.
and like that was like
There
an
no, but
important
there's no
thing.
barometer anymore of using that as a. It's
Yeah.
just the problem is that now it's become almost in the way like, where you have a kind of cheaper part of town, and then it gets gentrified, and then it gets too expensive, and then what starts to happen is that the only people that can afford to rent the
Yeah.
storefronts and commercial spaces are fucking A and
Yeah.
W's, and then the price of the neighborhood plummets again because
Yeah.
no one fucking cares about being there. Like what? And to me, that's like You kind of see that happening on Young Street or something, where it's
Yeah.
just like it's desolate, right?
Yeah, man.
And
Gentrification, it's a thing, and it happens all the
but
time.
it's so
Like in
cyclical.
so
But
many
it's like the
things,
same
yeah.
thing's happening with social media and Spotify, where it's like it becomes so ubiquitous that the relevance just plummets,
Yeah.
and that's how these things change and these paradigms, these tides turn all the time.
Hmm.
But I mean, what we're just talking about this for the last 40 minutes is that the one dependable thing is that a working musician will be playing music. That's
Yes.
it. If you
Yeah.
want to like if you want to be a musician for a living, quit your job and go play 200 shows a year. That's how you do it. That's it. That's the only answer. There's the only equation, and all the other stuff serves to either enhance or take away from that
Hmm.
experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of trajectories you can take, like in any, like not just as a musician, but in any career. But like, fucking like working hard is like, it
Absolutely.
like a
Yeah.
it's gonna make you not necessarily make you successful, but like it's really gonna help, and it's probably the thing that helps the most is working hard.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's just you get out what you put in, and for me, it's like the input output ratio for like playing X amount of shows, enough shows to have a livelihood is the ratios 1 to 1. Because I mean, a lot of people don't make you know whatever. I mean, how many people do you know that aren't like how many people that work at a bank are making $800 a day? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, to me, it's just simple math.
Cool.
So
So moving on a little bit. Like I like to kind of like discuss like the future and stuff, and like where you're going, and like things you're kind of planning on doing, and um maybe things that think might it might go in a certain direction. Like I think we've been talking about these, like, well, everybody's been talking about these like DIY shows and stuff. And one thing that I really wanted to like I'm hopeful for is that like these house shows kind of open up this like bring house shows to the mainstream. But like I think the real thing we have that like the whole industry has to do is like curb these like interests, and like keep the spirit of it the same, but you know make it more accessible, both to like consumers and artists. If you like,
well,
like
there's this
it
kind
would
of
be cool if like the house scene like expanded, and you could go like boom 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 boom, and like I'm gonna play a show here 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 and here, and I know like Jeff in Oshawa is gonna like put me in his backyard, and
sure.
you know
Yeah.
it'd be cool if like the spirit of it stayed the same, but it grew.
Well, the number one thing that people have to stop doing is associating the term DIY with like this sucks. Like just
Yeah.
like the fact that like you're doing something
Well,
yourself
like
doesn't mean that it's going to be a substandard quality. In fact, like
a hundred
I,
percent.
I've seen house shows that sound better than some clubs,
Yes.
and that to me is just exactly what that should be. It's
Hmm.
like you know taking a like a it's whether or not you want to like you have a painting. Do you want to put it in a nice frame or not? For me, it's like that. It's like uh, I love like I like, as a metaphor. It's like when you have like a really shitty, ratty, old hardcore poster or something from a show you saw 15 years ago, and it's like you can thumbtack that to the wall, or you can put it in a really nice
Hmm.
frame and cherish it and commemorate it. I prefer the former,
Yeah.
and that's the same for me. It's like I see a really good, high production value house show that sounds great, that looks great, that feels great, that everybody can't believe that they're that fortunate to be a part of.
Hmm.
Like that's what I do.
Yeah.
I don't like yeah, I don't cut corners in quality. I cut
Yeah.
corners in like, the kind of vehicle I drive.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's interesting too. You said like people
that's
have to
another
like
aspect of
stop
it.
like identifying DIY as shitty, but like in every other aspect, DIY is entrepreneur.
I was just gonna say
You
that. I was
know,
just gonna use that word.
like if
Exactly.
you're like this like tech dude who's like in his basement, like fucking typing away, like making the code for like the next cool social media trend or whatever, you're an entrepreneur. If you're doing that as a musician, like you're a piece of shit punk DIY kid, you know? Like,
Sure.
yeah, there,
Yeah.
yeah, like Kurt, yeah,
But I mean,
you
that's
said
what
too, like
I see that
I've
as the
seen,
future.
like
I see
you
that.
said it, but like I've seen house shows that sound better than a club show or like a theater
Totally.
show, you know, for instance, Sean Cotton, he's a musician out of Muskoka.
Yeah.
The first house show I ever went to was Sean Cotton. My dad took me, and this guy was awesome. He didn't even have a PA. He's got like a booming voice. He plays acoustic guitar, and he has his guitar case on the floor underneath his stool, and he has a tambourine inside of it, and he uses that as a rhythm section. It was the
It was
fucking best thing.
amazing. Yeah.
I'm a fan for life,
Well, and in
and he's
Germany, I
still
mean, like
doing it, man.
you, you know, one of the reasons why I love playing in Germany so much is like it's the production quality like reaches like hilarious levels insofar as like you can go into the grimiest fucking dirt floor rubbled out squat in Leipzig and there'll be like a tuned Meyer line array rig in it.
Really,
And
eh?
I love that. Like aesthetically the contrast is just so awesome, but also it's just so great to know that like the one thing that matters is like the making sure that the music and the art is delivered in the best possible way. Like ultimately it's like sweeping the floor. Who really cares? Like, let's be honest, but like that what people will remember is the fact that they had this really great experience
Yeah,
that was just a flawless experience in this really unique environment.
yeah,
And that's the goal. And so yeah, your question about the future, I think that like more and more people will just start to have a higher attention to detail as people as clubs start closing and people just stop being able to afford to open them, and et cetera, et cetera. And you know the caliber is just going to get raised, the bar is going to get raised, the standard's going to get raised, and everybody will benefit. And yeah, so you were talking about what's coming up. I mean, I'm going to put out on March 31st, I'm putting out an album of strictly like solo acoustic songs, which is something I probably should have done for years, but I've always been able to afford to bring musicians out and bring a band out for at least like a majority component of a record cycle, but that is probably not going to happen for 18 months, 2 years,
yeah,
until who knows what, all this fucking wave of bullshit subsides. So to coincide with what I see as being just like a couple of years of probably more or less solo touring, I'm
yeah.
putting out a solo record. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of house shows I'm probably going to play because um, I I like doing them and I don't like having days off. And I mean, uh, I've done lots of solo shows in clubs. I've done lots of solo shows at music festivals, at outdoor festivals. I've done lots of solo shows where I'm opening for punk rock bands. I've done lots of solo shows where I'm playing at 2,000 people, and I love all of them. But for me, the best way to deliver the music of this record in a live setting is to play for people that want to hear it and are going to listen and are going to be quiet and are there because they want to be, and they're there because they want to hear the songs, not because they want to get wasted with their friends.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, all this stuff is going to tie into the release of that record because I think for the most part, um, that's probably going to be a really good way of communicating what's on the album. And I think the more and more artists are probably gonna do that. I mean, like some of my favorite songwriters I've seen in the past 8 months have all been solo shows
Yeah.
because it's just like no one can afford to bring a band. So I think that um, folk music's going to make this kind of whatever revival,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that it's going to be done in this totally DIY punk rock, let's call it entrepreneurial framework, which I think is awesome because it's going to prove to people that the bottom line is that musicians are out there working, and all the other shit, it doesn't matter, because when the world ends, you know and you're at the party, at the campfire, at the end of the world, someone's going to have a guitar and they're going to be singing a song. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I mean, that's the way I see it.
That's really cool, man. Two kind of questions and things to expand on that. Do you know Guillermo Sabast?
I don't think so.
I had him on. I chatted with him yesterday, and I one of the questions I asked him was, what artists should do, because he's an like a studio engineer and a live engineer, and I was talking about like what bands should do on their albums, that are maybe limiting at a show, right? So, and like to hear your approach of like, oh shit, I'm going to be playing a bunch of solo shows. I should probably put out a solo, like a solo kind of acoustic album. Can you tell us a bit more about that album? Like, do you have a name? Do you have a name for it, or like, can you talk about it?
Yeah,
yet,
it's called a Dizzying Lust, and I recorded it in Windsor at a very close acquaintance and professional partner and incredible friend, and Sheila Roberts, who's
Oh yeah,
worked with
Sheila
for years.
Yeah.
So she was in New Orleans, and I recorded an album of songs in Japan in her kitchen. And I think every single aspect of the record is going to be pretty much DIY. I mean, from the recording of it to the mixing of it to the manufacturing to the release, it's going to be done as cheaply as possible. I'm probably going to do the whole album, including like all the manufacturing and pressing, for under $2,000. And I just kind of think that that's the best, most affordable, most logical, most, sensible way of releasing a record nowadays. I think that I'm just going to like slash all the expenses I can, streamline it, like go straight to the source. In general, I think just as a big metaphor, the whole record is going to be just as stripped down, as DIY as possible. And, again, it's like, it's just, I want to totally go full tilt Minutemen, jam Econo on it. And for me, it's like, if I have the capability of taking a song and reducing it to like the fundamental bare bones, like 6 strings and a voice, I think that's probably the most Econo thing you can do. So yeah, the spirit of it is totally Mike Watt. It's totally D Boon. It's totally Fred Cole. It's like, it's very punk in its approach, but it's really, really, really pretty and folky, and it's
very cool. I can't wait to hear it, man, and I can't wait to see you play again.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to take it on the road, and I think it's just, it's, for me, it's, again, like we've been talking about, what matters is that they're working, and so, whatever means I can take to get, the van on the road again, I will do. Like, to me, what's important is that I'm always out there playing, and I'm always out there working, and the van wheels are turning. And records now, I've kind of come to think of as just these sort of, these milestones that you use to sort of have an excuse to return to a city and play new songs. Mm-hmm. That's it. And, in the music industry, that's called the album cycle. But as that whole institution crumbles, I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's just new songs. I'm here with new songs.
Yeah, man.
And reduce it to the fundamental components of what it is you do. Very cool. I drive around and I play songs for people that want to buy them. And that's all I do. That's my job. And, it's like, I'm trying to sort of trim all the fat and get all that stuff that I hate out of the equation, and make it as profitable as I can, and make it as controlled as I can, and do as much of it as I can myself. And I think that, that'll probably get me through this sort of revenue lull until I can start, paying people again and employing people again, and having that kind of network that I had before COVID, where, when Guts came out, it was this really like well-oiled machine, and involved all these components and all these people, and it was fun. It was super collaborative. It was it was very expensive, but the return on investment was high, and it's a different world now. So I have to do it differently, and I think that's one of the ways to do it is just to strip it all down to its most minimalistic thing. And
I can't remember the name of it, but the new video you put out, you were kind of in a field with the
yeah, what water
burning lamp.
towers and
Yeah,
transistor radios.
was that a statement about your departure from that Guts time period? Because
I mean, I
I
guess in
remember
a way,
Guts.
yeah,
The
in a way,
lamp was a
sort of.
very that was heavy imagery of the Guts album.
Yeah, it is kind of a bit of a requiem for that. I mean, I think that like Tantrum Our Guts and Bells of Hope were kind of this trilogy that has now been the circle's been a little bit closed, and it's time to start something new, for sure.
I love that era of your music. I think I had two of those three albums.
It definitely. I mean, we covered a lot of ground. I mean, the people that were involved were fucking extraordinary, and for the musicians that I hired were all awesome. I mean, I think I circumnavigated the world, like fully went around the globe like at least 3 times
Yeah, man,
to play
you were
those.
busy, dude.
And then yeah, and so now it's just about trying to sort of start again and see what happens, because I don't really know if there's anything you can predict other than the fact that I know for a fact that I'll be working.
Yeah,
That's it. Other than that, I don't know anything.
that's the most important.
And that's, but again, it's like we've been talking about this whole time. All that matters is that musicians are playing music.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my whole 2 cents
Cool,
on
man.
it.
So like the other thing I wanted to say, like you mentioned a folk revival, like that's been going on like in Europe for a long time.
It has. I mean,
You know?
like on a kind of an underground level. I mean, I've been, yeah, like Old Seed is a close friend of mine. He was a groundbreaking artist in my life. He totally inspirational. He was like, from the very tail end of the 90s, early 2000s to now. I mean, he hasn't stopped touring Europe with a guitar and a bag, and he, I mean, very close friend of mine, very close colleague of mine, and yeah, it's funny how something that was just like he's been doing exactly what we're talking about now for like 25 years, and no one's thought it was like cool or innovative. He was just like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
This is the most punk rock thing I can do.
Yeah.
He's a total unsung hero in that world. But you're right. I mean, he moved to Europe from Winnipeg in the early 2000s because of exactly what you're talking about. He was able to make a living over there playing.
Yeah.
200
it's
shows a
something
year,
I've seen in like not so much like full bands or anything. Like I know you've toured around with your band, and that's fucking rad, man. That's no easy feat. But like I've noticed a lot of my my like kind of like singer songwriter friends and colleagues, just be super successful in those kind of markets where that like like smaller, like they have just these like kind of smaller clubs and like house shows
cool
and
venues.
and
Exactly.
the people are there for it, man. Like they it's like I'm jealous that that's not happening here, because it's something I've always like strived, and like everyone I've always introduced to it, like, and friends of mine who like kind of come to a house show for the first time, like they love it. And
yeah, I mean, it's like walking into
I
a
don't know
secret
why it
world.
hasn't gained popularity here until now. But
Well, I think what we were talking, people have been exposed to, a component of like an aspect of DIY culture or whatever that's seen as maybe being seen as a bit substandard. But
maybe
as
it's
that becomes the only viable way of
yeah.
working, I mean, that's not going to be that way forever. Like really, really professional people are going to start to trim the fat because they're going to want to make money again. And as that happens, you're going to see a huge improvement in the production value of DIY music.
Yeah.
In the same way that we were talking about gentrification, it's like the same trajectory, metaphorically speaking, that like, my career as a musician in Canada has improved tenfold as Toronto gets more expensive. Despite how shitty that is for people that live in Toronto, as a musician, I now have like 8 or 9 markets are available to me within an hour and a half of the city, where like 10 years ago that was just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
So my quality on a professional level, the quality of my life on a professional level is going to improve. And I think that the same thing's going to happen with production values at shows. It's like, as this becomes the only viable way to make a living, the people that still are committed to making a living are going to take the professional approach that they've had in, a more institutionalized corporate environment and apply it all to their own experience. And it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I think, and I think they're like, it's so hard to like predict what's going to happen, but like, I think you're right. And like, I think these like, more entrepreneurial minds will start having, these careers that are possible now. And, I think that small market is really going to grow. Like the large market, like that's not going anywhere. Like Beyonce and whoever's at the top of the charts is always going to be playing at like a massive stadium or festival. But I think there's just I think there's new opportunities for everyone outside of that small circle.
I think so too. Yeah. And I mean, you're going to have people that, like if going to see a show at the ACC costs $900, then you're going to have smart music lovers who are going to go see 50 shows a year for that money.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And like, I always think about like the supply and demand of the things too, right? Like, like some people just like pay more. Like when I ran my venue, it like I had a little VIP section, and like that shit always sold. People,
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with paying, like if people have money and they want to spend it, and if you can give them a little something extra, But I think I talked about it in my live stream the other night. Luke Bryan, he's like a massive country artist. Like this guy, like, plays some pretty fucking big shows. And, he was ragging on Ticketmaster and Live Nation and stuff. And, just him talking about that and like, trying to like bringing that to like the mainstream is like a super important conversation. I can't remember the point I was trying to make a point with that, but I lost it somewhere. But
well, I mean, it's just like the more people that think that they love music, that find out about the evil inner workings of it, are going to support artists that are really out there struggling. And so that's a like people that find out how little Spotify pays, and then they boycott it and they go buy more records. I mean, it's great to have that knowledge. And I think that like that's going to stop being this insular thing and become more of just a wider, popular understanding of what it is to enjoy and support artists.
Yeah. Speaking of albums, can you get albums like with this new release? Like, can you get vinyl? Like, are you?
Well, I mean, I think I'm not even gonna bother. I think I'm just gonna do CDs.
Yeah.
And I mean, if there's demand to press the record, then we will. But I mean, even that, I just don't think it's worth it anymore.
It's become it's become such a huge market now, and now
the delays are just insane.
Yeah, the fucking delays, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, I might have to call this.
Sure, man. Yeah, I
apologize.
No, I had no worries, man. I appreciate it. We've been talking for over an hour now,
okay, cool.
Trying to chat a little bit before that, so I appreciate your time, dude. It's great.
No problem. And thanks for you too. Thanks for asking me to do it.
Best of luck with the new album release and the tour. And I'll catch you on the road one of these days, man.
Okay, for sure. I'll let you know.
All right, and just let people know again where they can find you and where they can see your new album.
Yeah, it's Instagram / or whatever. I don't know.
I'll put them up.
My username's the fucking Eamon _Mcgrath. Twitter's just my name, one word. I don't know.
And the new album?
The new album's called A Dizzying Lust.
Great. Eamon Mcgrath. Thank you so
I will
much.
Talk to you soon, Jake.
All
Thanks so much, man.
Respect, my friend.
You too. Take it easy.
You're watching the Hostile Takeover podcast.